Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to find the volume of a prism. So the very first thing that we kind of need to talk through is what is a prism, and you can see two examples. There's actually two more here on this paper as well. But basically a prism is a solid geometric figure so it is 3D. Obviously we're talking about 3D shapes. We're moving from area into volume. And a prism has two parallel congruent bases. So this is what's going to be the difference between a prism and a pyramid. So our next video, we're going to talk about how to find the volume of a pyramid, but today we're going to focus just on prisms. So if we'll take a look here, we've got a rectangular prism right here, and you can see these two rectangular bases, they are parallel and congruent. So that's what makes this one a prism. This one over here has this triangular base and this triangular base. There's two of them. They are parallel to each other, and so that makes this a prism. Notice the base of this prism is not the bottom, and we're going to do some highlighting later, so it's really going to be more helpful. So the very first thing that we need to do when we're talking about finding the volume of a prism, if you've been in my class for very long at all, you know the very first thing I'm going to say is to write the formula. So if we reference our formula chart here for 7th grade, the formula is capital V equals capital B times lowercase h. So let's talk through what those mean, and we're going to write those in words here for just a minute. So V is going to stand for volume. So to find the volume, we're going to plug in capital B. So capital B is really important, and I'm going to make its own little section up here at the top. So capital B has a really important definition. Capital B stands for the area of the base. So lowercase b stands for a length of a base. Capital B is going to stand for the area. So basically we're going to have to do some work to find the area of the base of our prism before we can plug it in. So capital B again is going to stand for area of the base. And then that's right next to this h. So that means then we're going to multiply it times the height. And I want us to be really careful because it's the height of the prism. Okay, and this is going to all make a lot more sense whenever we're actually getting to these examples. So let's zoom in just a little bit here. And I think the best way to do this is just to go ahead and get started. So the very first thing that we want to do on every single problem is to write our formula. So V equals capital B times h, and let's go ahead and name this figure. I'm going to highlight one of the bases here, and if you have this in front of you, I would really encourage you to do the same. So this is going to be this base here. You can see this parallel base over here as well. We're going to highlight another piece here in just a second, but let's go ahead and name this figure. So this figure, because its bases are rectangles, they're always named by the bases. So this is going to be a rectangular prism. Always named by the bases. So if you ever have a question as to whether you're finding a prism or a pyramid or anything like that, normally it's going to tell you what shape you have, and that way you can kind of see, oh, this is a prism, so I'm going to use the prism formula. So I'm going to draw my line here. I don't have the volume, so I'm going to bring that V down. And so the next thing that I need to be able to plug in is for capital B. And remember, we said capital B is the area of the base. So let's take a look at this right here. If our base is this shape, then we need to go over here somewhere, and we need to find the area of this figure right here. Well, we know, based on the name, we know it's a rectangle. So to find the area of a rectangle, it's base times height. Remember, lowercase b for area. if we're just looking at this yellow rectangle and we're not looking anywhere else, it looks like the length of the base of that yellow rectangle is 5 and the height of that yellow rectangle is 4. So if we're just finding the area just of this base, then the area of that base is going to be 20. And that would be centimeters squared because it's area. So what we would do then is we would take our 20. If we know the area of the base is 20, we would plug it right here for that capital B. And now we need the height, and remember it's the height of the prism. So if we want to find the height of the prism, we look for both bases. So if this is the first base, this is the other parallel base, the height, and I'm going to highlight this one in pink, the height is always the distance between the two bases, okay? So the height is always between the two bases. So I'm going to kind of make another note down here. Always the distance between the bases. It is not always going to be sideways. It's not always going to be up and down. You can't really tell. That's not exactly a rule that I would tell you to follow, but I would tell you to follow the rule that it's always the distance between the two bases. So if we're doing that, that means that the height of the prism is 9. So the only thing that we would have to do now is do 20 times 9, and we know that that's 180. And this, because it is volume, is going to be centimeters cubed. So area is going to be squared, volume is going to be cubed. Okay, so let's go ahead to our next example. All right, so the very first thing, let's go ahead and name this figure. It does have a triangular base. Notice this rectangle, it is lying on that rectangle. That is not the base because there's not another one parallel to it. The base of this figure is the triangle. So this is a triangular prism. So it does have two bases that are parallel, and they are triangles, which is why it is a triangular prism, okay? So again, if we're finding the volume of this triangular prism, first thing that we need to do, V equals capital BH, and then we gotta come over and we gotta find the area of the base. So let's take a look at our base. Our base is a triangle. Remember we said this is a triangular prism. So because our base is a triangle, we're going to use the triangle formula, which is 1/2 lowercase b lowercase h. And let's go ahead and find the area of this base. So I need 1/2, and I need the length of the base of just this triangle. So the base of this triangle is going to be 15. The height of just the triangle, not talking about the prism, the height of just the triangle is 8 centimeters. So let's go ahead and multiply those out. So we have 1/2, and 15 times 8 is going to give us 120. So now when we're finding half of 120 from our area videos, we already know we can either divide that by 2 or we can multiply it by 0.5. This one we can probably see in our head. Half of 120 is going to be 60 centimeters squared. Again, we're squaring that because it's area. So now we're going to take our area of the base. Remember, we literally just found that this base has an area of 60 centimeters squared. So we're going to plug it in for capital B. So the thing that we just found, we're plugging it right in for capital B. And now I need the height, remember, of the prism. So if this is the other base of our prism, I want you to see if you can take a look and find the height of the prism. Remember, we had that definition right here. The height of the prism is always the distance between the bases. So if you look at our bases, here are our bases. This is the distance between those bases. So the height that we're gonna plug in for H is gonna be 12. A lot of people would be tempted to use an 8 right here. 8 is not the height of the prism. 8 is the height of the base, so be really, really careful. When we multiply 60 times 12, we get 720, still centimeters, and it is still gonna be cubed, okay? Capital B times H. Again, all we're doing, we're following our formula. If we can follow a formula, it's just a set of directions for us to use. Now notice, this triangular prism was sitting on the rectangular face. So the next example we're gonna see is gonna be a little bit different. If you notice, it's still a triangular prism. Absolutely still a triangular prism, but let's go ahead and shade the base, okay? So this one is lying on its base. So this one, I think for most of us, might be easier to see that it is a triangular prism. Both the last example and this one, both triangular prisms, but both sitting differently. Okay, so very first thing we're gonna do, write our formula, V equals capital BH. Should hopefully be a habit by the end of this lesson. To find capital B, remember capital B all the way up here at the top. Capital B was the area of the base. So again, our base is a triangle because we have triangular prism. So we want to find the area of this triangle. So our area formula for a triangle is 1/2 BH. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. And we're going to definitely calculate with a calculator because these numbers, as you can tell, they're a little bit trickier. We're more worried about can we find the area and volume, so we're definitely going to plug those into a calculator. So 1/2, and I need the length of the base of just the highlighted triangle. So the base of just the highlighted triangle is going to be 9.8. And here's where this one gets really kind of tricky with this picture. I need the height of just the triangular base. So if I'm looking at just the triangular base and I can cover everything else, just the yellow, the height of the yellow triangle is 5 33/100. So notice I used 5 33/100. I did not use the 3.8 for the height of that triangle. I'm sure you can probably already tell 3.8 is not the height of the triangle. 3.8 is going to be this guy over here. So let's go ahead and use our handy dandy calculator. 9.8 times 5.33, if we multiply those together, it's 52 and 234 thousandths. And then I need to find half of that. So if we divide that by 2, remember finding half of something, we can just divide it by 2. That's gonna give us 26 and 117 thousandths. And this, the units is feet cubed. Okay, so again, let's go ahead and plug in. I'm gonna move this over just a little bit so we have some room. Capital BH, we just found that capital B was 26.117, and now we need the height of our prism. Remember, the height of the prism is the distance between the two bases. So if this is the second base, if I highlight it, it's gonna look a little kind of funky here, but if this is the second base, the distance between those two things is 3.8 feet. So that's why we're going to plug in a 3.8 for this height. All right, when we multiply all of that together, we get 99.2446. And in a perfect world, we'd probably round that. We don't need to though, because we've got a calculator right now, and it is gonna be feet cubed, okay? Absolutely gonna be feet cubed. All right, so let's go to the very last one. Just really quickly. We're gonna go over here to our last example. And if you'll notice, this one's kind of a different shape. It has our handy dandy base. So in your mind, I want you to think about what shape this is and what shape that this prism would be. So this here is absolutely a trapezoid. So this is going to be a trapezoidal prism. We're not going to see them very often, but you'll notice we have some given information. So we've got this right here that is given to us, okay? So the very first thing that we want to do is to write our V equals capital B times H. And what we have already is capital B. So are we having to go to the side here this time and plug a formula and find the area of the base? We're not having to do that this time. They've actually already done the work for us. So questions that already have the area of the base given to you, they're actually way easier. They've cut a step out for you. So all I have to do is plug in capital B is 32.5. Now we got to find the height of the prism. So if you'll look, this is our first base. This is our second base. So the distance between the two of those is going to be 6.3. So all we would have to do to find our final volume is 32.5 times 6.3, and we would have our final answer. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. If you can find the final answer of this last volume question, I would love for you to comment in the comments and let us know what you thought and what answer that you got for the volume of this prism for the last example. Just a reminder, always write your formula, V equals capital B times H. And remember, capital B is the area of the base. Stay tuned for our video on the volume of pyramids coming up next.